feast of St. Columban places us in a long succession of people who were free. Precisely the message of the Gospel that we have just read. These three cases, excuses for not following the Lord and taking up his invitation. The Lord wants freedom. Columban is a good example of someone who let go of his moorings and went in peregrinatio, something that you know as a legion. And what did he do? He echoed this verse reading from Isaiah. How beautiful on the mountains are the feet of one who brings good news, who heralds peace, that peace on which we meditated at some length today, brings happiness, proclaims salvation, and tells Zion, your God is King, a theme on which we meditated this evening, royalty, sovereignty, majesty, and authority, the dues of our God and Maker. Now, these Celtic saints were in a lineage which associates Ireland with the desert. As you know, both Wales and Ireland, and then through Ireland, Scotland, were drawing on an Eastern spirituality. The monastic desert comes through an Irish descent, and something similar in Welsh, is a place where God precisely had his rights and had access. In fact, when I used to come back to Ireland from Rome as a student, I used to be hit immediately after coming out of the airport. It was usually a friend who would pick me up and take me back to the monastery, and very quickly one was in this desert. The night, which is night, dark, which is dark, the stars, which are stars, silence, which is silence, coming from Rome, where nothing of the sort existed at night. In fact, our house, Normandy House, in the middle of Rome, well, not the middle, but nearly, was a red light area. You know what that means. Now, therefore, we are still, once we get out of the Dublin area, and actually here near the sea, because the sea you can't build houses on it or drive cars through it, is a place where one can meet silence and peace. There is a natural therapy in the air. As guest master in the monastery where I was in Italy, I used to invite people to take advantage of the fact that it was one of the most beautiful spots on the face of the earth, the Abbey. You can actually see it on YouTube. Sant'Antimo is a real gem, and the country is likewise around. Therefore, all I had to do was go for a walk in the long summer months, or actually in the winter, which wasn't too cold. And there, silence healed. The contrary, unfortunately, is true. That noise damages, noise clutters, noise pollutes. Noise takes away our freedom, takes away even our possibility of independent thought. Add to that the willingness to take in, on an aggressive level, messages pumped at the brain from sources not graced. I mean, unfiltered television, not coming from EWTN, but from other sources not at all open to God, is exactly what the demon wants. He hates peace. A priest friend of mine, who you may know from Michael Marr, great Marian priest, muttered one day as he left my house, as he often calls, quoting an old priest friend of his who has long since died, "Hell is full of noise." And people who are full of noise are at home in hell. Look at them, noisy people. Look at how even young people cannot bear to be exposed to silence. So much so that they will see them walking in the street or even running in the street, plugged in, their ears listening to noise, noise, noise. And what you listen to in bed until they go to sleep. I imagine that they are playing with their smartphones until the last breath of daylight goes, henceforth until the next immediate waking to the artificial noise of the mobile phone, so that all the moments of peace and quiet are sacrificed to an artificial means of contact, so that all the energy is drained and channeled into some contact with something outside their soul, the which is never reached, never touched, never contacted, because without silence we cannot meet ourselves either. Therefore, there is no interiority, no interior life without silence. If, therefore, one sees, for instance, secondary effects, that families are unable to handle issues, that actually young priests quite often are unable to handle issues and leave, it is often partly because the interior system is weak, and that capacity just to be alone with one's thoughts and one's God, and yes, oneself, is no longer there. It is not enough to be functioning as a priest. This applies to anyone, but legionaries too, functioning for the Lord, to function without intimacy. It is one thing to be in love and to function because one wants to do what the beloved wants. It is another to be operating efficaciously on the outside alone. Paul VI, one time, was looking around at all these things that he had to sign. Each one was a laicization. In those days it used to happen very quickly. It was in the exodus of the early 70s and way into the 80s, although he was no longer Pope. Actually it stopped. It stopped very quickly under John Paul II and became very difficult for a while. Then he was looking at these and he muttered one day, he signed one and he's reported to have said, "Al biglietto per l'inferno." He has a ticket for hell. And another time he was talking to priests who might be in difficulty. In some address he gave, probably young priests, perhaps of his own diocese in Rome, remember the joy of your ordination. Remember the joy when you first said yes. This takes us back to the gospel that we have just heard. Once the hand is laid on the plough, no one who looks back is fit for the kingdom of God. Make no mistake. A person who has been close to God at the altar will never ever be deeply happy again. Even if he marries the most beautiful wife in the world, he knows where he's coming from and he can't avoid the issue. All he can do is block it out. The devil knows it full well, so what does he do? He obnubilates the deepest messages of the conscience precisely by operating on the periphery. He provides a convenient smokescreen so that the soul can't hear itself. Passions take away from freedom, because no longer does the reason calmly. The passions command, and decisions made under passion are not the wisest. This, my friends, is what actually we're up against on the level of the church. Notice which priests leave. They are often the best. It's precisely because they're the ones that cause most harm to old Nick. But also families collapse, sometimes the best. He is striking on those two levels very strongly right now. The families, because they're the nests of vocations, and also the channels of grace, normally for those who are coming into life. again, his great means is to take away from deep communication through entering in, like a Trojan horse, into the family, being enthroned, even during meal times, in the form of his scream, so that they're listening to him and not to each other. It is very easy to block out an embarrassing silence by switching it off. But then, where is it as we come to intimacy? And not only that, but whereas when, first of all, television came in, it was black and white and very simple. It was a big event for the family. The one screen could be actually the centre of attention for the whole family watching a good programme. When I was small, the big event of the week was actually all of us watching to see who done it on Perry Mason on Sunday evening. I was allowed to watch that late or go to bed, just on once a week. But it was all together. And you'd be seated between Dad's knees, wondering which one was the culprit. Now each one goes to a separate room and watches a screen there. So it's very divisive indeed. And how many young people now cannot communicate even properly with their parents, or even sometimes with their equals, because the virtual presence of a screen and the people dialoguing with there continually is more real than the reality of just Dad and Nan. But it can be our case as well. Watch the mobile phone. It's a dangerous instrument. Be in command and control of it, and not vice versa. Don't think it always has to be switched on. Don't think you have to reply immediately. Let the messages pile up. It's one way of handling the day. Being at everyone's beck and call immediately is another, and bit by bit eroding for the nervous system. Certainly, make sure that it's not on when you're with your God. There was a sign in some church in Italy to this effect, that mobile phone had to be on. It was something to this effect. Now I am talking to God. I can't listen to you as well. We leave it there, my friends. We can't be talking to more than one person in one point of time. So if we want to listen to God, we need what? Peaceful availability. All is there. Peaceful availability.